In this video, we're going to cover some of the new updates that came out as part of Power BI's October 2023 feature updates, including things like the new Model Explorer, updated pipelines, and the new home experience in Power BI Desktop. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So let's get started with the updates that came out this month, starting with this Power BI Desktop, OneDrive, and SharePoint integration. Now, this is actually not a new feature. It's a feature that was released a few months back, and now with this month, they're revisiting it because there's been some new updates or upgrades in this feature. There are now a bunch of new things that you can do with this integration. A few things to note would be you're now able to open files. You can now save files from Power BI Desktop into OneDrive or SharePoint directly. You can now also share reports stored in OneDrive or SharePoint directly from your Power BI Desktop. Now, this is all cool, and one of the actually really cool things that I found out that you can do with this is if you have reports. If you have a report saved in OneDrive or SharePoint, and if you don't have Power BI Desktop installed, you can simply just use the Power BI service to open these reports directly from OneDrive or SharePoint. So this kind of saves you the hassle of having to download the file as a PBIX and then installing Power BI Desktop if you don't have it yet. On object interaction, the same as most of the months, have had some small updates for this month. The first thing is this new data flyout for date hierarchies. So previously, if you are using date hierarchies and if you want to switch to the normal view in your data well, you would need to right click and then switch from the hierarchy into the normal row date. Whereas with this new feature, you can still do that, but you now have an additional option, which is the flyout, which lets you change, and it's a lot easier to find that you can do and remove that hierarchy. Visuals that you're editing using on-object interaction will have placeholders, which lets you edit them directly in the object themselves. So previously, if your visuals didn't have a title, there will be no section for the title on the object itself, so you can't really double-click on the element because there's no element there. You will need to go to the format pane and change the title from there, which sort of defeats the whole purpose of on-object interaction because you're doing it from the pane instead of on object. So now with this new feature, when you have no title on or there's no text in that visual, it will show a placeholder text which you can now double click and edit it on the object themselves. So it lets you continue that on object experience. Now, just to note that the placeholder text will only show up if you are editing your visuals on object, so if the on object is enabled. So don't worry about the placeholder text showing up in your reports when you are publishing it for your users. The next thing is that ribbon and funnel charts now fully support on object interaction, which I sort of didn't know that you couldn't do before, but that's probably because I don't really use these visuals that often, but now you can use the kind of full suite of on-object interaction, changing the labels, changing the colors or bars like you would with other charts in Power BI. There's a new home experience that is now available for Power BI Desktop, and it's meant to make it easier for you to access your different Power BI reports in this view. You'll notice that the layout of this new home experience is fairly similar to the Power BI service. So if you use Power BI service on a regular basis, you'll find this layout to be super familiar to you. Some of the things that you can do here are obviously like before, create a new blank report, open any of the recommended reports that they list out and curate for you, as well as open any of the quick access reports like, reports that you've recently opened in a list. One thing that the feature update doesn't really put here is that this feature is a preview feature. So if you want to start using it, and you won't find it automatically when you update to the October October 2023 version of Power BI, you'll need to enable it first in the preview settings, restart your Power BI desktop, and then you will see the new home experience. You can now set custom rules on how Power BI deals with duplicated tables, columns, or measures when you're using composite models. So composite models in general don't really allow for duplicated names for tables, columns, and measures. And how it typically handles that is if there is a duplication, it will just create or add a 2 at the end. So let's say you have a sales table and then you create a composite model and it has the same table that's called sales. It will now change the title or the name of that table to sales 2, which you don't always want to do. But now with this new update, you will now have these options in settings that lets you fine-tune control how those duplications are being handled. You can add things like changing the text of what it's being added, if it's a prefix or a suffix, to what type of elements should it be added to, tables, columns, or as well as when these rules get triggered. Editing your data model within the Power BI service have also had a small update this month. You can now manage your relationships in your data model the same way that you do in Power BI Desktop. So you will have this button under the home ribbon at the top, Manage Relationships, which will bring up this view, which it looks like they've done a little bit of a revamp on how they represent the relationships, which I find to be a lot easier to look at. So a bunch of things here at a glance shows you a lot of information, like what type of relationship these have, what is the filter direction, or what is the status of that relationship. And it even lets you filter to find the relationships that you're looking for if you have a model that has a ton of relationships set up. There's a new model explorer in public preview available for this month, which exposes the semantic model of your data model. So to start using this, you'll need to make sure that you are updated to the October version of Power BI Desktop, enable it on the preview settings, restart your Power BI, and when you open up your reports, you will find this under the model view on the left-hand side, and then go to the pane on the right-hand side, and then you will see the model tab available for you, which will show you the semantic model. Now you will find under the semantic model a bunch of different things that you would most likely be familiar with already. Things like measures, tables, relationships. But there might be other things here like calculation groups, for example. And calculation groups is a sort of an advanced feature that you couldn't really customize directly in Power BI, and you would need an external tool like Tabular Editor in order to update or even customize this. Now you don't need these third-party tools, or at the very least you don't need it for calculation groups, because you can really just do this directly in Power BI Desktop. There's a lot to unpack in this new model explorer, so I'm going to try to cover it in a separate video, give you a better overview of what it offers to you and how you can use it in your reports. Next are the new updates that they made to the OneLake Data Hub, which now gives you a lot more options to explore the data or the different items within your OneLake. So the one thing that they've added is this Explorer pane that lets you access or gives you quick access to different workspaces, or even access your favorites in a kind of easier way. And then lastly, deployment pipelines have been updated. You can now customize the stages within your deployment pipelines. So you can, first of all, change the number of stages that you have in your pipelines. Typically, it was 3 and you could only have up to 3, but now you can have up to 10 stages in your deployment pipelines, rename them and customize them as you need. And then if you're working with multiple deployment pipelines are supported for multitasking now, which means that you're able to kind of swap or change between the two easily from the Power BI service on the bottom left-hand side corner of the screen, like you would with your Power BI reports. And that's really it for all of the updates for this month. There were quite a lot of new features that came out, so I didn't really cover everything. I just covered the ones that were pretty interesting to me. So if you want to learn more about the other things that came out in this month, I'll leave a link to the full blog post in the description box below. Thanks for watching as usual. Give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so I know to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.